Ms. Villegas.
Yes. Thank you, Chief, for joining us here today. Wow. It was a couple of weeks ago that I asked for this communication, and that was before a lot of these transitions have transpired. And thank you for being here today at joining us with this meeting. I have a large folder of emails and concerns from different people about what happened, how it happened. So I'm just hoping you might be able to shed a little light on what happened and how it happened, and then moving forward where we're headed, what the vision is, and the direction, and how we can support you, and how we can disseminate the accurate information about this transition to those who are so passionately concerned, which I appreciate. Unfortunately, with animal advocacy and passionate people, sometimes incorrect information can spread like wildfire. So thank you for being here today to help clarify all of those issues.
Good morning, Council members. Paul Ferreira, Police Chief. I felt it necessary that I show up and not one of my majors or my assistant chief to go ahead and respond to any questions that you may have regarding the Animal Control Services and the contract. As you're all aware, July 1st, 2020 is when we put out a new contract for Animal Control Services. Prior to that, the Hawaii Island Humane Society held a contract for years, I believe more than 20 years that they held a contract for us. In July 1st, in August, the contract was awarded notice to proceed to the Hawaii Rainbow Friends Sanctuary. Then they were doing business as Hawaii Rainbow Rangers. They came on board in August 2020. I don't believe they fully understood what they were undertaking and what was entailed in taking over the animal control contract. When they came on board, they did not have the facilities or the resources that they pushed forward in their proposal readily available. So the county and the police department took it upon themselves to say, okay, let's work with the Hawaii Rainbow Rangers, or Rainbow Friends, and allow them the time to transition. The allotted time was extended to October for them to transition and provide the animal control services. At that time, we had the facility in Kona, which is next to the police station, that is county-owned, that they were able to take over. And they were negotiating to take over the old Hawaii Island Humane Society facility in Waimea that is owned by Parker Ranch, and they had no facility in Keao. Moving forward, they advised HPD that they would be providing these services by November, end of November. So in the interim, mutually agreed was to scale back the funds that they were being provided pursuant to the contract, because the contract monthly allotment was for full services, animal control officers, animal care officers, veterinarians, everything that was included. That was allowed to go forward to November. Came November, they still were not able to fulfill all of the obligations. Again, we said, okay, fine, we'll give you till January, moving on, we'll move forward. We understand what is going on. Finally, in April, they were able to secure 3 facilities, the one in Kona, the one in Waimea, and they're releasing property from Barking Dog Kennels, I believe is the name. So in May, they did the first animal control officer training that they brought on board. They're required to have, I believe, 15 animal control officers. I thought it was 17, but I believe 15 was the number. What transpired after that is we started, all during the process, from the time the contract was awarded in August, the police department, the patrol officers were responding to calls for animal complaints. We would get responses, we would get complaints from officers, we'd get complaints from the community, and we'd field all these complaints going forward. In May, when they finally had full complement of employees, we stated, okay, let's let them move forward. The recommendation from my staff was, let's go out for a new RFP. I said, and my decision was, no, let's give them the time. We got them this far, let's see what happens. Let's give them the opportunity. Let's move forward with extending the contract, taking the option year. Well, we started in May to June, we started getting more complaints, and now we had complaints internally from employees at employed by Hawaii Rainbow Rangers. So finally, on June 21st, we set up a meeting with Hawaii Rainbow Rangers leadership. Barry Rose, Mr. Lipkin, and their, I guess, animal control director that they had in place at that time. The meeting was held at the Hilo Police Station. They came to the meeting, and no offense to the Rainbow Rangers, anyone there, they came to the meeting totally unprepared. They had no plan, they had no recovery plan, they had no way of what was going forward. How many employees they had on staff, what was going on with their animal shelters, unable to answer any questions. Now the meeting was myself, Corporation Counsel, representatives from the mayor was there, and finance director. Well, basically I explained to Mayor Rose, I was really disappointed because they came to the meeting totally unprepared. The recovery plan they produced was 2 weeks later that was sent to us. It was after the decision already made. Let's not exercise the option here. Let's look at just canceling the contract and see where we can go from here. How can we best provide the services? And that is where we ended up terminating the contract, asking Rainbow Rangers if they would stay on board for a month at a lower rate just to maintain the facilities and care for the animals. There was never, ever any discussion of mass euthanasia of any animals, as was put out in social media. The police department did not go out to these facilities and take over, as it was pushed out in social media. What's interesting is one of the social media articles said I was at the Kipimana facility on Tuesday afternoon. I'm glad they told me because I didn't know I was there. So that is what went out on social media. So I tried to dispel that, and I understand that the council got an email blast as well. So I responded to all of the council members, attaching one of the email blasts explaining our position. And that is where we're here today. Moving forward, yes, we have secured an 89-day contract with Ms. Serrano, who has been named as one of the parties that were against all of this. We have executed an 89-day contract with 3 animal control officers, one in Kona, one in Waimea, and one in Keau, to respond to calls for service. We have taken over back the Kona facility. We are in the process of arranging a lease for the Park Ranch facility if it becomes open, and we're looking at what we have available in Puna. What if anything is available. We do realize that the barking dog kennels, if I'm saying the name right, is available, and we are working with county finance and property management. Is it feasible for us to lease that? Is it open to lease? What is available for us? That is where we stand. We have acquired back the vehicles that were county-owned from Hawaii Rainbow Rangers. We will be outfitting the 3 animal control officers for now to respond to calls for service. In the meantime, the calls are coming into the police department like they usually do, and we will respond accordingly. We have asked the Department of Public Works to assist us in the removal of dead animals from the roadways, which they have been doing since the start of this contract. As Hawaii Rainbow Rangers, we're not able to accomplish that either over the course. And that's where we are, and I am open for questions.
Thank you so much, Chief Ferreira. I just have a couple of questions. Now, the responsibility of animal control, when they get a call about a creature that's in distress or seems to be feral or whatnot, protocol is to take that animal and hold it for 48 hours. Is that kind of...
Anytime we take an animal into our possession, it's for 48-hour hold,
Okay.
which allow us to find the owner. If there is an owner, we'll determine what is to be done with an animal. After the 48 hours, the animal is turned over to a shelter. It can be turned over to anyone out in the community. But there is also a 30-day window that if the animal is owned by someone else, they can actually come and claim the animal, and that's why we have to keep tracking of those animals.
Right, right. You know, I know some people want, I don't know, they may want to, based on all the emails I got, go round and round about all, with the accusations, and blah 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 blah. I guess for me, what's most important here today is having the opportunity to sit and listen to and ideally provide support to. I think it's actually wise for our county. It seems to make sense in this municipality for police to play this active role in this capacity. This is a thankless job to begin with. Anything to do with animal control, or any time it touches on euthanasia or kill free versus kill, it just sets. It's really challenging for everyone, and so I just want to thank you honestly for stepping in, taking control of these operations at this point, and I appreciated one of the testifiers saying that there is a path forward. We obviously have a problem. We have too many feral creatures, and they're, cats, as much as I love them, are an invasive species and are devastating our bird populations. And the concept of catching and fixing and releasing doesn't change unless they could be a pet. It doesn't change the challenges and the burden that it places on our ecosystem. So I just want to open it up to my colleagues, but I am hopeful that we can navigate with more intensive support from the police department. I know the newspaper article said that it was like $94,000 a month was the payment, which seems like a lot of money. I know it can be spent really quickly when it comes to locations and staffing, but I'm really hopeful that we might be able to pursue a model of having animal control, a unit that is within the police department, and then working with the nonprofit organizations and volunteers that so often don't have the capacities to kind of be that, be the staunch hand of the law when it comes to animals. So thank you. I open this up to everyone else.
If I may answer, make a statement. As far as the enforcement part, it belongs to the police department. The vicious dogs,
Right.
stray animals, animals not on leash. As far as the animal care and control portion, it doesn't belong with the police department.
No.
It should be a different entity totally.
Okay.
I understand that. I can still remember when the contract came to the police department way back when, and I don't believe it belongs with the Department of Finance where it sat before. And it came to the police department specifically because of the enforcement part. We've always had that enforcement part. We've always responded to that enforcement part, regardless of where the animal control is. The animal control officers would respond to calls for service if they could, to violations that may happen. They may see they had the powers to issue citations. They didn't have arrest powers. But we would ultimately route the cases to the prosecutors or look for prosecution in those cases.
Okay. Okay. Do you know what the protocol or in other municipalities are?
I checked with the other 3 jurisdictions across the state. I understand that Honolulu, because I understood that Honolulu was similar to what our operations, and the Honolulu Humane Society is doing during their contract. Honolulu does the same thing. They respond to all vicious calls and those in nature. Their county finance, I believe, is the one that holds the contract with the Humane Society, and the Humane Society does the intake of animals and of that sense. Kauai is pretty much, the county takes care of everything with the Kauai Humane Society. Kauai Police Department just responds to calls, 911 calls or calls for emergency service. That's it. I didn't get a response from Maui, but I believe Maui is a similar situation that both us and Honolulu is in.
Okay. It seemed kind of it seemed a shame when the Hawaii Island Humane Society didn't renew their contract to maintain that part of the services. But I can understand the complications. This feels like the portion of, it's just a thankless job all around, because you're navigating creatures who aren't always in the best circumstances, and the desire to save every one of them can often create challenges, many more challenges. So I'll open it up to comments from my colleagues.
Mr. Cornelius Kleinfelder.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for bringing this forward, Rebecca. Your timing was impeccable, given what happened and how many emails we all received and the discussion in the community. And thank you for being here this morning, personally, Chief. I I just gonna dive into a couple questions and then touch on where I think we could go. But I think as part of the contract, do we have a requirement to inspect their facilities island-wide?
Yes,
And have you? Oh, sorry.
yes, we do.
Okay. And have you inspected them?
We have
today?
inspected them as often as it should have been inspected, I would say.
Or
And
recently?
recently, yes.
Okay. And what was the state of the facilities?
Facilities in the most sense were not kept up to standards what it should have been. The animals being sleeping in their own excrements. The facility in KL was never intended to be an animal control facility as much as Kona and Kamuela was. The animals were not the report I got back was they were not being mistreated. It's just that they didn't believe they were receiving the care they should have been.
Okay. And then from what I know, there's two facilities in KL right now. You have both the Kipimana facility that just began. I think that's I want to say it's under Best Friends. And then we also have the Rainbow Sanctuary, where some of the animals are being housed. But I have a lot of the neighbors in the vicinity of the sanctuary who are concerned because they're hoping that the animals are not being transferred from the Kipimana facility to the sanctuary because it's a neighborhood and the dogs are barking all night long. So where are the animals that we have or that were in the facility being transferred? Are they still in the Kipimana facility? Do you know?
The animals that I know of were kept at the Kipimana facility, which is the reason we had asked Rainbow Rangers to assist us in caring for the facilities and the animals in place. The staff that we brought on board is supposed to be working with other animal groups, Humane Society advocates, to transfer some of these animals that have gone past the 48 hours for adoption, for placement, for what needs to be done with the animals.
Okay. And is Sanctuary one of those providers or no?
Off the top of my head, I can't respond to that. I really don't know.
Okay. Have all the appropriate reports been submitted by the Rainbow Rangers?
We're still waiting on some of the financials.
Okay. What can you speak about as far as going forward, as far as contract? I mean, can you talk about that or no?
Well, what we're looking at is during this transition period, during the 89 days, we're going to look at what is best practice. What should we do? Should the county adopt the animal control officers part of it and just contract out the care and feeding of animals? Should the county look at, I know someone brought it up, purchasing a facility to house these animals? What is the best alternative that we have? Or should we just put on another animal control contract and maybe separate it or change it up a little? These are all questions that we're trying to get answered within this period, having just canceled the contract in June.
Okay. And then who's driving the decision making as far as contract and providers? I mean, classically, it's been the mayor's office, HPD.
That would be us discussion with county finance and the mayor's office.
Okay, and that was the question too. Is why isn't the council fixing this? And in my head, I had to go back and forth. Like, well, we do have a role here. It's been interesting from the first time we brought in Humane Society to have a discussion, and seeing their executive director fired 3 weeks later, to seeing the transition to Rainbow Rangers, and then watching this contract being, however it played out. But here we are. But in watching all that, it's been interesting.
In the future, not if we do put out a contract of any type, nothing prevents the Rainbow Friends from bidding on the contract or any entity from coming in. And we have had organizations out there, advocates that have sent in emails saying that, when we do open up a contract, they want to be part of it. They want to look at it.
Okay.
So there is interest out there as far as the animal groups of what they can provide and what they can assist us with. The media release that we did push out identified an email address so anyone in the community that has one of these groups to send in their interest, give us input. People have been sending in, okay, this is what's done in this jurisdiction. Perhaps you guys can look at this. So all of this is going to need to be researched.
Okay. I would like to offer my services. This sits pretty near and dear to my heart. From the beginning, I watched Humane Society falter a little, and then I saw the different groups step in. There were other groups who wanted to submit for that first contract as well. And a lot of them are very good, and they do the same thing they do today as they did back then, and they provide service to our community in the form of animal control. I was interested in knowing if there is a group that part of the council could sit in on if we wanted to, if there was a willingness on the administration's behalf to have council involvement or not.
I have no problem taking input from anyone.
Okay, okay,
The more voices that are heard, the less conflict we're going to get down the road.
okay. I'd like to be part of that, and I'll send you an email as far as, I've been in discussion with some of the different parties, and I'd like to share my insights so far.
The only issue that we would have going forward down the road is when we do plan on putting out a contract, the information that is contained in the bid process needs to be following procurement rules and who can chime in or
Yep.
who can. So we have to be very careful in that sense. But as far as coming up with a proposal, what a plan should be going forward, I have no problem.
Understood. One of the glaring things that is evident is that the lack of an East Hawaii facility is a major undertaking for any entity providing animal control. If you walk into animal control services here, the requirement is 3 facilities: East, West, and North, or Kohala. I think Ocean View has been left out of the discussion, and I think that needs to be addressed. But East Hawaii, serving close to more than half of the island's population and with a lot of animals, has no solid facility. And I think the community was under the assumption that Humane Society was that facility. A little latitude, Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And yet, it's not. It's not a county-owned facility. It's owned by the Humane Society. So I think addressing an East Hawaii facility, regardless of where it is, would be a huge benefit to any entity, whether it's whether we change the system or not. But as far as an animal control service provider having an East Hawaii facility that's county-owned, that creates a transition that's smooth. Right now, it was really hard for that transition to happen. So, thank you for the latitude, Chair, and then thank you for being here again, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Corneli Kleinfelder, and I just want to point out also that Corporation Counsel is in Kona, should anyone have questions. Mr. Richards, your light is on.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Chief. And first of all, I want to echo something that Chief said concerning the misinformation, actually really disinformation about this mass euthanasia plan for all the animals in the shelter. That was a complete falsehood to, I think, incite emotions. I've been part of this conversation since I found out that the contract was no longer being extended. And at the request of the administration, I was asked to be available to help review the facilities and animals to see if there's any medical needs. As most of you know, I'm a practicing veterinarian. And as I reported on that, the animals themselves, there are a few that need some medical attention, but there's no glaring problems of the animals I reviewed. And so that was good. Now, that was not a comment on what was going on in the shelters. And there are some programmatic problems in the shelters, and I think this is what's being attended to. Ms. Vegas, you pointed out the concern for the overwhelming number of cats we have out there. And when I mentioned the program problematic issues going forward, we have an animal control side, and then we have and then what portion, meaning after what happens after the 48 hours. And we've all had the Hawaii Island Humane Society we previously had for that for as long as I was in practice. So, Chief, longer than 20 years, closer to 35, as I can recall. And, to your point, Ms. Vegas, the problem is the enforcement side, because it's never popular. No matter what happens, it's never popular. And it is problematic. But nonetheless, we as a county, we as a community, we as a body, we owe this to our community to manage that. And this is where the problems start to occur. Now, what we're talking about here is that first 48 hours, not the care afterwards. And I appreciate the fact that the county has reached out to seeking that aid. And I know several of the group have come to the plate and said, look, we're going to help you in this transition phase. Some of my experiences, personal experience as practicing vet, and seeing some problems that were coming forth and they weren't being attended to, which is a problem for me, and wearing both hats. We didn't have a staff veterinarian, and we didn't have good veterinary policy that I could see to deal with the impoundment of animals and going forward from there. I think we all received numerous emails on numerous different issues, but we talk about animal control, and I have one constituent that had a concern for a cat that was removed and then placed back into the community that was causing a lot of damage to her own personal animals. Animal control, we need to attend to this, and so these again are some of the problematic issues that were coming up again and again. Administration did ask that if I could help put together a group of veterinarians, and I did, all volunteer to be on standby if we need to attend to things, and so that is in place right now, and so far it appears that things are flowing going forward. Chief, I'm interested in your comments about the jurisdictions and how they administer in other. Did I understand correctly? You said we have an enforcement side and then turn over to Humane Society?
My understanding, that is what the Honolulu Police do. They handle only the enforcement side, and they have a contract with the Honolulu Humane Society to transfer animals to. Kauai is pretty much separate from the police totally. But the police department will respond to calls for service as far as vicious animals emergencies.
Okay, and and some of the things that have come out in this is, for instance, I know if we have a dog bite of a human, that's a police issue. If it's of another dog, that's not necessarily a police issue. It's a enforcement officer. Do I understand that?
But we usually respond to it as well. We'll get called to respond.
Which I think we as a body have to look at that, because if we have a vicious dog, just because it hasn't bitten someone yet doesn't mean it's not a concern. So I think we have to come back around and visit this. It's a tough time now, and I appreciate the fact, and I appreciate the efforts of what the county is doing, is because we as a body have to take our animal control very, very seriously. And I think most of this group understands that. Little attitude, Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Richards.
Thank you. For the facilities, yes, we need facilities. And Matt, I appreciate you saying north-south, not just east-west. The one in the north, Waimea, that one was initially established for large animals because of the community, and then the small animal followed suit. So, but I think it's a good idea we look towards something Ka'u or somewhere in the south. So with that, thank you, Chair. I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. Ms. Leloy.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Rebecca, for bringing this forward. When the police chief shows up, it's a big deal. And that he's here to answer our questions means this administration and his department is taking this very seriously. And so I'm actually going to walk back to the contract, Chief, and just help me understand, and maybe you've said it a couple of times. I'm still trying to drill down on what it is. What is our exact charge? What is our duty, whether it's under the charter, whether it's under HRS? When it comes to animal control, what do we have to, at minimum, provide?
It's governed by the charter. If you look at the charter, that animal control services are handled by the county. That is the enforcement of the animal laws, the vicious dogs, the noisy dogs ordinances, and also the care and taking in of animals, what happens in that first 48 hours, the responsibility to identify the owners, and the need to care for these animals until the owners are identified or released, and also dealing with the feral population out there, that we need to have animal control in place to address those issues, whether it be spay and neuter, whether it be euthanize animals, what have you, trap and release, all of that has to be part of it as well.
So it's all encompassing, because I'm really trying to understand, what is our kuleana right here? And we have philosophical ideals on care for our animals. And I know government sometimes is unfeeling that way, and so I'm just really trying to understand. Our charge is the public safety, right? And if there is a threat to that by an animal, the department has a duty to respond. Is that kind of it in a nutshell?
That is a small part of it, because
Okay.
you still have the care of the animals after the fact.
After.
And you still have the care or removal of animals that are on the roadways, if they're injured or dead or what have you. You have all of that still in play. As far as the law enforcement part is a very small part as far as the enforcement of the law or the charter in the sense of noisy dogs or vicious animals. The rest of it is the care and what Humane Society used to take care of. And if you go back at least 3 years ago, and we were before the council then, police department was, Humane Society was, because there were allegations against Humane Society and the mass euthanasia. It's a difference of philosophy. You know, what is being done with euthanizing animals that need to be euthanized, and a strictly no-kill policy, which is what Hawaii Rainbow Rangers were looking at. And I think that caused a conflict internally for them as well. You know, that's where a conflict came about as far as their management teams not agreeing with each other, not having each other. But as from the county standpoint, from the department standpoint, what we looked at, this is public funds that are being expended, and are we receiving the services that they were contracted to do? No. So I said, okay, fine. If we're not receiving the services that they were contracted to do, like anything else, we terminate and let's move forward, as opposed to keep feeding the animal that we're not getting what we're paying for.
And thank you, because it feels so unfeeling, but this is the public's money, and they were tasked under the contract to provide services. And from what I heard you say, they weren't meeting their contractual obligations. Thank you so much for clarifying that. I have some other questions. So you mentioned the department. You came from finance, and I've been asking this for a little bit, right? Kind of not it, right? Nobody kind of wants it. But it's with you, Chief. So my question is, I know you brought in an individual under an 89-day contract. Is that the contract monitoring piece that the department needs? Because we know that our officers do so much already. But I'm also seeing that there was some obligations that someone from the department monitor this contract. Is that individual?
That is part of the contract, written into the contract that we have with this individual for the 89 days, is to be an animal control director, what we would need. Because right now, and goes back years, when we took over the contract, the duties are assigned to the major or captain of administration that has a ton of other work that he or she is doing regarding law enforcement. And this is a small part of it. When the contract was brought over to the police department, it came without staffing, it came without resources. So it was incumbent on us to go out and do the monitoring, inspecting the facilities. We have knowledge and skills relating to police work. We don't have knowledge and skills relating to what is being done as far as an animal control facility, which is why I reached out to Dr. Richards and asked him for his assistance and the veterinary friends that he have when we did the inspection of the facilities on June 30th and July 1st.
Thank you, Chief, for acknowledging that. We have amazing skill sets, but you recognized that the department needed help with recognizing animal welfare. How many animals are we talking about related to this contract right now, or kind of where are we? Because there's a lot being said about how many are not being accounted for.
When they did the inspection on July 1st, there were 52 dogs and 46 cats at the Kona facility. There were 21 dogs and 17 cats at the Waimea facility. There were 45 dogs and 34 cats at the Kiao facility.
Thank you. And I have to ask, but it's a bit morbid, because part of the contract also talks about deceased animals. Do we have an accounting of that?
We don't have an accounting of what deceased animals had, but I know when they went to the Kona facility, there was a freezer full of dead animals, dead carcasses. We would assume that those animals were the ones recovered off the roadways. Like I explained earlier, Department of Public Works, because of lack of response, we were using Department of Public Works to clean the roads when they needed to, when they had dead animals, and they would dispose it at the landfills in accordance.
Thank you for answering that kind of tough question. Was the contract that we have in front of us for Hawaii Rainbow Rangers augmented or edited a bit from what we've seen in the past? Do you know, Chief?
I believe there were changes made with regards to what is euthanasia, what regards to reporting details. Off the top of my head, I don't know the specific changes that were made from the way the Humane Society held the contract.
Okay. Do we know of any outstanding payments? Because we got an email from from a vendor who provided spade and neuter, and they asked the council to get them paid. Do we have an accurate accounting?
That's what Mr. Kleinfelder asked regarding the outstanding reports. One of them is the financial reports that's still waiting on, because we're getting the same inquiries that these individuals have not been paid. We also have, you've gotten the emails that Mary Rose had put in monies from her own pocket to move the contract forward. We're asking for validation on it. What if we owe her money or we owe a vendor money? We will see through our obligations. But we need, again, because it's public funds, I'm not just going to approve an expenditure unless I see documentation stating what and where it is.
Yeah, Chief, could you look into that? Because the contract was clear about commingling of funds.
Yes.
And so I'm going to leave that to you, Corporation Counsel and Finance. I'm sorry, I had so many questions around the contract. There's interim services, right, when they started the contract. And one was contractor shall supply the county with a list of permanent staff as requested. Was that provided, and were they permanent staff?
That was part of the ongoing problems of them retaining staff to work in the shelters, also the animal control officers. When they swore in the animal control officers in May, they finally got them sworn on. In June, when they had the meeting with us on June 21st, they already lost 10 of them. They already lost 10 employees. So how can they continue to go forward? Those were questions that were never answered. And again, no disrespect to them, but when they did show up for that meeting, they were totally ill-prepared. And I made that statement to them, that they should have been prepared to tell me, this is what we have, this is where we're going, this is what we need to do. Not tell me, oh, I think I have this, or I think we had that. You know, you don't come to a meeting with us when you're trying to defend your contract by stating those things.
Okay, I don't want to get too far in the weeds. I'm sure you are working it out. And there was one other thing, a contractor shall supply the county with copies of an executed lease agreement for the facilities. Was that provided?
Again, they were having difficulty finding a facility in Keau or Puna District.
Okay. I just want to offer, Chief, you know, a number of us have already, last question, have sat on the nonprofit grant and aid, and we've issued a number of nonprofits funds to help with animal control, spay, neuter, housing. And I had my staff take a look at the last 5 years, and the total request from these nonprofit organizations was $900,000. So on top of our animal control contract, the $2.5 million, there's an additional ask from nonprofits for another $900,000. Over the last 5 years, we were only able to grant $150,000. And so I'd offer this to the department, finance, and corporation counsel. I mean, these are the groups that we might want to reach out to that could help us close the gap on spay neuter, and then just adoption and fostering our four-legged creatures. Chief, I really appreciate you being here today.
Oh, thank you very much.
Here, I yield.
Thank you. Before we head back to Mr. Richard, oh, Ms. Kirkowitz, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Aloha, Chief. Great to see you. Thanks for being here. I just wanted to address a couple things that came up with some of the testifiers. Someone asked about a capacity assessment and if that's ever conducted prior to awarding of a contract. I'm not very familiar with how procurement works, but just wondering if that is something that we take on face value in terms of what they present in the proposal. Can you provide insight?
My understanding, it was within their proposal what they were going to be providing, where they were going to be located at, what resources that it would have to their availability. And again, when they started out and they made that proposal, I believe there were entities that were involved with other advocate groups or other animal groups. And whether or not that fell to the wayside or it didn't come to fruition. But again, what we did was understanding that they may not have understood the full impact of what they were undertaking, allowed them that space or that room to start building their facilities or start building their programs.
Okay.
So as far as the capacity, I've heard that lady, I think going forward, it's something maybe they have to identify ahead of time, this is what the facility is going to be. At the time the contract was awarded back in August, the Hawaii Rainbow Friends were the only bidder to the contract. Absent that, the Humane Society extended the contract for 1 month and they were not going to extend it any longer.
Okay, so police department puts out an RFP and says we need A, B, C, D done. Rainbow Rangers submits a proposal and says we can do A, B, C, D. This is how we're going to do it. This is how much we can do it for. And this is the time frame, the different milestones we're going to meet to get it done. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, there was never you're forcing them to do certain things. It is they're responding to your requests for service.
Yes, and they put in the proposal as far as what they're going to be able to do, how they're going to be able to do it. Part of the contract stated they were actually supposed to be ready to go August 1st.
Okay, because I recall a conversation with Rainbow Rangers at the council last term where they said, we've been in negotiations with police department on this, and then a few days later, they were expected to mobilize, but their proposal reflected being ready to activate by a specific date.
When you submit a proposal on a bid, you're saying that you can take over this action from this point forward.
Okay.
And again, understanding the complexity of it, we understood where they were coming from and we gave them the leeway to try and establish themselves. Of course, it was at a lower funding rate. One of the emails that you may have gotten is that they were not receiving the same funding as Hawaii Island Humane Society. Well, Hawaii Island Humane Society was performing all of the obligations in the contract, so they were getting the full award monthly. Hawaii Rainbow Rangers was providing only 50% of the obligations.
So they get 50%.
You're going to be paid 50% of what you're providing. We're not going to pay you 100% for 50% for 8 months. I would be fired if that was the case.
Of course. Doesn't seem responsible, right?
Not with public funds, no.
Of course. Okay. I'm just trying to wrap my head around this because, like Councilmember Villegas was sharing, there was a lot of folks that have come out very passionately about this issue. And at the end of the day, we just want there to be a solution. We want folks to be successful. So I appreciate your team taking a hard look at over the next 89 days how we can do things differently. It just seems that this particular contract is such a bear for any one organization to handle, so maybe piecemealing it out. And then finding people who are operating in spaces of excellence in those areas to take on, different aspects of the work.
What's been promising, if you look at what's happened, and probably a lot of the nonprofits that you have on that list have come forward and said, okay, they're willing to help. They're willing to take in animals. They're willing to step forward and do this. And this is voluntarily. Now, I'm sure, if down the road we may look at, okay, can we contract you to take over this part of it, the spay-neuter part? Can we contract you to do an adoption and move the animals, as some people have stated, shipping the animals to the continental United States, where there are groups that will take in these animals? Is that feasible for the county to do? These are all areas that we need to look at, and we will be looking at them.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that. One more thing. The recovery plan was brought up, and you mentioned that They came to the table. There was no recovery plan at that point in time. It was delivered 2 weeks later. But you felt that in the year that had kind of, come and gone, working with the organization, that plan wasn't strong enough to extend the contract for another year.
Again,
Is
it
that
was a day late and a dollar short, if I may be so blunt.
Okay. Is there anything that you feel that they did well?
You know, they did. Their intentions were well. I mean, I would say that they were well intended when they came in and they bid on the contract. I understand the no-kill philosophy. I understand the passion for not killing any animals if they don't have to be. You know, for finding room for adoption, finding homes for these animals. So I can understand all of that. Because of the changes, I guess, because of the different philosophy that was going on, that is where the conflicts came up, and that is where they faltered. Whether the groups that they were partnered with decided they were no longer available or they didn't want to be part of it, it changed along the way, and that's where they faltered. I don't believe that they undertook this contract knowing the full impacts and realizing what the full impacts were.
Right. And if any of their partnerships sort of fell through, that was an aspect of the operation they needed to quickly fill in the gap around. It's very helpful to have this conversation. So often community members have really great ideas, but going from idea to tangible achievement, that's where the rubber hits the road. That is the difficult thing. So having, this conversation with you, Chief, is helpful because now we know how we can better build up capacity and support our community so that they can be getting contracts and successfully executing in the future. So thank you, appreciate it. And then mahalo, Dr. Richards, for sharing your services with the county on this particular issue. It's great that you had this expertise that you could share. Mahalo. Thank you, Chair. I yield.
Thank you, Ms. Kimball.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chief, for being here today and answering our questions, and to my colleagues for really covering most of it. I just had just a couple quick clarifying questions. The first being, do you think it's necessary at this point to do a comprehensive audit of what has happened in the past year around this issue?
You mean a financial audit?
Mm-hmm.
That will be done regardless.
Okay.
We need to account for the money.
How about a process audit?
As far as the processes that were in place to build the contract, I don't know that we do that. It's more of a sense of going forward, how we can look at what was done and maybe what changes need to be made, or what worked, what didn't work, kind of thing. But as far as the financial side, we would do an audit.
That kind of leads to what I'm trying to understand from the conversation here is there a need to revisit the contract and really change what we're asking of some third party to provide, or is it we just need to find the right third party or the right combinations of third party to meet the existing contract?
Well, that's part of what we're going to be discussing or looking at is how do we take on the next animal control contract? Do we contract the entire thing out? Should we have personnel in the county that taking over some of the issues, like the director, animal control officers? Should that fold into the county, or should that be a vendor issue? Mm-hmm. Should we stick with one vendor across the island, or should we look at doing multiple vendors if we have a director in place somewhere else? So those are all issues that we will be discussing and we'll be looking at. What it would be the best way going forward.
Great. That answers my question. I just wanted to clarify whether or not we were looking at revisiting.
We're not putting out the contract as is right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, these are the simple questions that we want to have absolute clarity around. I just want to also ask about the current capacity. You said you have the 89-day hire, which will act as a director, and then 3 animal control officers. I do get about a call a week or a vicious dog issue or some other animal-related complaint, and I do have great concerns about our ability to respond to that. Are there any plans to bring on additional staffing for this particular part of the program in the interim while we're working out
That
this
is what we're
contract?
looking at as well.
Okay.
Should we be breaking up additional 89-day contracts with other animal control officers, or even with individuals to care for the animals at the facilities? These are all issues that we need to address. The initial hire of the director and 3 animal control officers was to address the immediate need that we had to deal with. Can we get someone out there just so that we can respond to the most urgent calls, understanding that we're going to have calls that are going to the wayside because we don't have the response.
Right, okay. Any expectations on time frame? On how long it's going to take to do all these evaluations and?
I wish I could give you an answer, a definite one, but again, it's an 89-day contract we're looking at. Realistically, I'm looking at it 6 months total over the long haul. What's going to happen, how it needs to happen.
Okay, great. Thank you again for being here, and also thank you, Councilmember Richards, for all your mana'o and helping out in this really dynamic time. We all certainly, I'm an animal lover myself. I have 3 dogs and 1.5 cats, and I say that because one of them's kind of feral, and we captured her and spayed her and we feed her, but she doesn't actually like come and cuddle with us. But at the same time, I want to appreciate the comment that Councilmember Villegas made, that these are non-native species. They do a lot of damage to our native bird population. The toxoplasmosis issue with our native seals is also a significant issue. I have no idea how many feral animals we might have on this island, but it's certainly a problem, and want to see this addressed as effectively and humanely as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kimball. Anyone else before we go back? I'm going to start with Mr. Richards. His light was on first.
Thank you, Chair. And I did want to echo something the Chief just said when the question was posed. Was there anything good? And the answer is yeah. As I had stated previously, I went into the shelters to triage animals, to look for any immediate crises. And there are reports that there are some things going on, and my statement about some programmatic errors or inconsistencies or needs are definitely there. But one of the things I did notice that some of the staff is outstanding. And I saw some animal handling that I thought, okay, this is not something that can necessarily be trained. This is something that's inherent. So some of the staffing that I saw was really good, and so we have some stuff to work with, and I believe I passed that along, that I thought some of the staff was really good if they were interested in going forward. So but anyway, I just wanted to make a comment that I think everybody's quick to criticism or criticize, but when a kudos needs to be given, sometimes we need to do that. And some of the staff there was outstanding. I was really impressed. Chief, I do appreciate you bringing up the freezer, a very sensitive issue. And I think there are some things that we do need to work on. Again, I'm willing and ready to support whatever we need to do to move this forward, because as Ms. Kimball just said, we want a humane process going forward, and that's what we're here for. So thanks, Chair. I yield.
Mr. Corneli E. Kleinfelder.
Thank you, Chair. I think at the end of the day, it's a public service that we provide, and it's our duty, it's our responsibility. And so whatever way we can help, I think you need to know that we're here to support you. But more so, again, I'll offer my services because I've been involved in this from the beginning, and that may be 2.5 years, but for Puna and for my area, this has been a huge issue. I did want to follow up. At the facility we have now, do you have a number of animals that were there?
At the KL facility, there were 45 dogs and 34 cats when we went in.
And they remain there, or
all of these animals were remaining there once we took over, and they were being not pushed off, but moved out to adoptions. I know Humane Society was contacted for some of them. And I know other animal groups was also contacted as well.
Okay. That was someone texted me and asked me that question, so I figured I'd ask again.
And that's why, I know in our email out that our press release, we said we had a moratorium on bringing in animals. We didn't want to intake any more animals until we could know what we were dealing with and how we're going to deal with it going forward. It would be like senseless to come in and, okay, we're going to still take in animals, not knowing what we have or what we're going to do with these animals going forward.
Do you need volunteers right now? You need
Right now, like I said, I'm amazed at the amount of support that we have gotten from all the advocate groups claiming, I mean, not claiming, they're asking, can we help? We walked the dogs in Waimea before. Can we continue to walk the dogs? We used to come to the Kipimana facility. Can we continue to keep coming? So I'm instructing staff that, as long as they're there to assist, help, we have no problem with it.
Okay. Again, let us know how we can help. And then I think for the public, if anyone's watching and they haven't heard yet, right now the directive is to call non-emergency, correct?
Yes.
And I would say that with a note of caution because I know in Puna we are understaffed as far as police officers right now. And so the strain on our officers is going to be, I think, immense as we start to call the non-emergency number for.
And hopefully, one of the directives was, let's get cell phone numbers out there for the staff that we have contracted, so they can take the calls as well. And we can move away from the 3311 numbers,
Okay.
except if it's an emergency case or a vicious dog complaint that we would respond to anyway.
That's normally the police's
Yes.
jurisdiction. Okay. And then is there going to be a press release from HPD as far as numbers or who to call?
As soon as we get those in place, we will push out a media release, and we'll be on all our media outlets with social media as well.
Beautiful. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. I yield, Chair.
Mr. Chung.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Chief.
Whatever.
I've dealt with this animal control contract for many, many years, as you know. And no matter who the contractor is, there's always going to be complaints, right? One way or the other. Sometimes it amounts to philosophical issues. I remember when Ginger Toll from the West Hawaii Humane Society used to come regularly. This one is a little different, though. And first of all, I really want to thank you, not putting any of the other chiefs down, but you really seem to have the best grasp of the issues and are able to answer all of the questions in as good a fashion as I've ever seen. Because this is a tough, complicated matter, right? You have a lot of moving parts and
I have good staff under me that provides me with the answers. I believe me, I don't take it up myself. I have very good staff under me.
And thank you to them too. But I really will say this, and I'm very impressed, with the depth of your knowledge and the information that you have on this. Thank you so much. We could go on and on asking questions about this matter, right? I'm going to try to just keep it as short as I can because, we could talk about the Rainbow Rangers contract, or we could talk about how, what we do moving forward already, because that's POW. But there are some questions about that the canceled contract that I'd like to ask. First of all, Ms. Leloy brought up something about the staffing. My question regarding the staffing is, were these, the people working there, employees or independent contractors? Because I'm hearing all kinds of stuff.
We don't direct the contract holder or the vendor whether or not the workers there have to be employees, or if they're contracting their services out. We state that they have to have employees working for them. Now, whether or not they enter into private contracts with individuals or hire them on as full-time workers, I wouldn't be able to say.
Well, what I'm worried about is this, and you might want to look into this moving forward. And I don't really know what's true here. I really don't. But if the information that I've received is correct, then most, if not all, of the people working there were under employment contract. They were independent contractors. But built into those contracts are the times that they're supposed to be there. That runs afoul of state and federal laws. And we cannot be complicitous to something like that. So going forward, I think we have to take, and I really don't know if it's true, but sounds like it's true. So we might want to take a little bit more hands-on approach on that matter, okay? That's my suggestion.
And I could be wrong. They could be actual employees.
Could be. We don't know. Right?
I can find out and definitely get you an answer.
Yeah. And then, there was reference made by several of the council members here regarding the facilities. 3 or 4, I don't know. Can you tell me all the facilities that they have?
They had three facilities under the control. In Kona, the facility right across the police station.
Kona, okay.
In Waimea, the facility that was the old Hawaii Island Humane Society facility.
Okay.
That is leased from Parker Ranch. In Puna, at one time, they had the Rainbow Friends Sanctuary up in Kurdistan or Glenwood, I believe.
All right.
And then they transitioned to the Barking Dogs kennels that they leased until April. And then they moved into the Kipimana facility in Keau.
Okay, where is that, the Kipimana?
Kipimana Street is a street that goes into the Ag Park, Shipping Ag Park. They're on the Makai side, on the Kalapana side of the roadway.
And is that a lease or a purchase?
That's a lease, my understanding from them. It's a warehouse that they lease to house the animals.
Okay. And is the lease, do you know the terms of the lease, more or less?
No.
So they could actually cancel the lease?
Yes.
Okay, so we don't have any detrimental reliance kind of issues. I mean,
that's why we asked them, and that's why we're going to compensate them for continuing the service for 30 days while we can do a transition.
Okay.
And in the interim, since we were made aware that the barking dog kennels have become available, is it feasible for us to release it? I don't know if we want to buy it or what would entail. But again, we are looking for a facility in the interim.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that, we're on firm footing in terms of the termination of the contract, right? I mean, if they had purchased or if they have entered into a long-term lease, relying upon the county's representations that, they would have a contract, we might have some issues there. But, I did look over the request for proposals, the contract terms. Looks like you guys are well within your rights to terminate this contract. So, I think we're okay over there. As I said, there's just so many questions that can come up. But those are really the two most important ones. I will say this, though, over my many years of, having to work during animal control contracting periods, I don't think I've ever, in fact, I can safely say I've never had so many calls of complaints about any program. We get contacted via email, mass emails about different projects or, initiatives or legislation. But on a program of the county, never have I received so many complaints. And then, I'm not trying to put, the contractor down, but it's a fact. It ranged from not receiving phone calls back from, the animal control people, just little one. And this other one, this kind of interesting one, somebody from Alamoku called me. And they have no skin in the game. They're not trying to belittle the contractor. But they said, they called up the contractor, they came, picked up the cat, brought him back into the same environment, and was told that is their program. They called it the trap, neuter, release into the environmental, that management area. But when I looked at this thing, it's a pilot project, and I called your office, and they said that pilot project was never implemented. So, that's what they were telling the public. So that's not really nice either, right?
Believe me, every email that you got, I think we got.
Yeah,
as well.
Of course, I know that. I got phone calls, everything. It was crazy. Yeah. But so, just the response time would be very important. being truthful to the public. And you know what I think will be crucial on this, though? It's the philosophical issue about the no-kill. Because you have, ours is called an animal control contract. And then you have no-kill. Those two things not exactly the same, right? We're trying to control animal populations. So I think you got to look at that. And finally, Mr. Chairman, I will say this. For many, many times I've said, I don't think you guys should be the lead agency on this. I've said it in public. I thought I couldn't figure out where it should be, but either the mayor's office or corp counsel or maybe, and then your department is tasked with the responsibility of animal control. But to administer the contract, that's a bit much, I think. So we got to think of a better way of doing this. Maybe it has to be housed someplace else, but you guys are the people who are going to be providing a lot of input because you guys are the guys, who are tasked with that responsibility. So maybe now is the time for us to revisit all of that. Yeah, and that's all. Thank you again, though, Chief. I really appreciate everything you said today.
Ms. Villegas.
Just a quick mahalo. I had to chuckle, and thank you for your graciousness as I kind of put together a simple response to the hundreds of emails and was cutting and pasting. I totally overlooked the email from you, and so I sent it to Chief Ferreira, and he responded, well, actually, for clarification, you were so gracious, and I just thank you for that. I felt, oh no, but I had to slow down, look at each email again, and make sure I was responding to the right people. But thank you for your graciousness and sense of humor and ability to clarify, and it's brought a lot of comfort for myself and for the constituents in our community to be able to say that, this was just the timing was kind of synchronicity to have this communication, have this opportunity to have this conversation. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Mr. Chung.
Thanks again. I just wanted to make this one comment in deference to a person who was trying to get testimony into our website, and that's Franny Pueo. Everybody knows Franny, right? Yeah, and the reason why she reached out to me is because I've been getting my cats fixed with her organization, and she didn't have anywhere else to turn, so she sent it to my email address, and she was just concerned that it wasn't on, what do you call it? When all of the testimonies are on our website, right?
Yeah, we post them online for the public to access.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say, Franny, we got that corrected and it's now posted, and then so people can read Franny's comments. Thank you.
Any last comments or questions? Okay, I think my colleagues did the job, but Chief Ferreira, Councilmember Chung literally stole my words when he said and I'm young, obviously, but so impressed because every single question that this body has, pretty much you have an answer for every time, whether it's this or the budget or you have it all. And thank you to your staff for making sure that you have it all.
Like I said, I have good people working on them, and they prepare me well before I come out and get myself in trouble. So.
You don't even look at your notes, though. You just know it already when you come before us. So with that, there is a motion on the floor to close file on communication 301. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We have 9 ayes. This brings us to the end.
Motion to adjourn.